Do you think that a Class D amplifier can be musical at the same time work well for an intimate home theater? Well, I'm going to state right now, I absolutely think they can. There does seem to be a preconceived notion out there with a lot of people that Class D amplifiers can't really be for hi-fi or home theater, that they're mainly for pro audio. Well, I don't really agree with that, and today we're going to discuss why while we talk about the Nuprime AMG STA amplifier. I'm Barrett, this is Spec of Tech. Welcome to the channel. Those that follow the channel know that I was originally using a 5-channel Marantz amplifier, but then I moved to tone winner amplifiers, which are a fantastic budget amp in my opinion. I've linked a couple videos in the top right hand corner, but I've since transitioned now to Nuprime amplifiers, which we're going to talk about why in just a minute. But before we get into all that, I do want to point out that I've purchased all of these amplifiers with my own money, so nobody has any influence in what I'm about to say. I purchased all of these amps from one of my favorite hi-fi and home theater retailers, and it's called Summit Hi-Fi. I've dropped links down in the description below if you'd like to check them out. I did cover this in the unboxing and first impression video, but I purchased 3 Nuprime AMG STA amplifiers for my front stage LCR, and then I purchased 2 4-channel MCX4 amplifiers, which cover the 4 surrounds as well as my 4 height channels. But today's video is strictly about the AMG STA amplifiers that are powering my front stage. And before we get into these little but powerful amplifiers, I did want to give a little background on Nuprime as a brand, because if you are like me, you didn't hear about them until fairly recently. You may have heard of a brand called Nuforce in the past. Well, Nuprime and Nuforce are somewhat affiliated. Because in 2014, Nuforce's co-founder Jason Lim teamed up with the OEM factory to purchase Nuforce's high-end products assets and started Nuprime Audio. So they are a fairly new company, but they have been making waves with their proprietary hybrid technology and continue to win awards. They do offer a line of home theater amplifiers, which is called their Nuprime X lineup, but they also offer products like CD transports and music streamers like the Stream 9 that I have in my rack. But that's for a completely different video. They do seem to be dedicated to hi-fi, and I have to admit they have made a believer out of me, starting with the AMG STA amplifiers powering my front stage. And now that we're back to the AMG STA amplifier, let's cover the price, the specs, the build quality, the sound quality and performance, and of course there will be some demos there along with a disclaimer before we get to my final thoughts and conclusion. The AMG STA amplifiers are one of Nuprime's more premium options, and they're priced at $1,695 a piece. But if you are looking for other amplifiers from Nuprime, I have dropped links down in the description below for a few other choices from their lineup. Nuprime has implemented their double feedback Class D circuitry coupled with a single-ended non-negative feedback Class A module with these AMG units. And all this basically means is that you get the benefits and efficiency of a Class D amplifier along with the sound of a Class A amplifier. And if there are those of you out there that are wondering what frequency these amplifiers oscillate at, it's 700 kilohertz. So this unit is 9.25 inches wide, 11.2 inches deep, 2.16 inches tall, and weighs in at only 8.8 pounds. This is one of the reasons I really love these amplifiers, is that they're so feathery light. The AMG STA is a stereo 2-channel amplifier with 130 watts per channel into 8 ohms, 200 watts per channel into 4 ohms, and if you bridge it or put it in mono mode, then you have 300 watts per channel into 8 ohms and 320 watts into 4 ohms. The gain of this amplifier in stereo mode is 26 and 52 in mono mode. The total harmonic distortion, or THD, is only 0.006 with a frequency response of 10 Hz to 50 kHz, which is plus or minus only 0.2 dB at 8 ohms. The front of this amplifier is very clean and simplistic. You only have the chrome Nuprime branding, an IR sensor for those of you that would like to turn this on and off with a programmable remote, and then you have the on and off toggle switch. The bottom of the amplifier has 4 rubber vibration isolation feet and the 115 or 230 volt selector switch. The back of the unit has the master power switch, the fuse, 2 sets of 5-way binding posts, a toggle to switch between balanced XLR and unbalanced RCA inputs, a toggle switch between stereo and mono mode, and continuing right from there we have the 2 balanced XLR and 2 unbalanced RCA inputs. To switch to bridge mono mode, you would just want to flick the switch to mono. Then you use either the bottom RCA input or the far right XLR input. So that will sum up the physical features and specs of these units. Let's move on to how they put it all together with the build quality. But real quick before we move on to the build quality, please help me get to 20,000 subscribers by hitting that subscribe button, tick the bell icon if you do, and please take just 1 second out of your day to hit that like button. I truly do appreciate it. But if you really do enjoy the channel and you want to support it, please consider joining me on Patreon or the Spec of Tech Facebook group, both of which have links down in the description below. Alright, so let's move on to the build quality. The first thing that I noticed when I removed the AMG STA from its well thought out and very nice packaging was how incredibly light it was, but at the same time it still had a feeling of being quite substantial and very well built. And I can't help but feel that the metallic blue aerospace aluminum played a role in that. And when looking at the rear panel of the unit, you are again greeted with attention to detail and stellar build quality. A nice added touch was that there are some blue LEDs within the chassis that provide a little bit of a blue glow from the XLR inputs. It's not a huge deal, but at the same time, I do appreciate attention to detail like that. All of the connections are very well machined and appear to be high quality. Nothing was loose or poorly put together here. I think that it's fair to say that you can rest assured that the build quality will not be of disappointment, at least it wasn't for my units. I do want to backtrack just a little bit here and talk about how light they are. Because of my YouTube channel, I am always testing out new gear, so I wanted something that was a little bit lighter, a little bit smaller, and a little bit easier to move around, but at the same time still had a lot of good clean power. I learned about Nuprime amplifiers from my friend Amir at Summit Hi-Fi, and I recently upgraded to legacy audio speakers, so I thought it was a good time to give Nuprime Audio a chance to win me over. And I have to be completely honest here, guys, getting these amps out of the boxes and getting them set up was really a breath of fresh air. I stacked all three of the amplifiers on top of each other, easily lifted them and got them set up in my rack without so much as a huh or an which I normally do when lifting a 60 or 100 pound amplifier into my rack, simply because it is a little bit awkward to get it placed in there. And after I got them placed in the racks, I hooked them up to my front stage, which is the Legacy Audio Focus SE Towers and the Legacy Audio Marquee XD center channel. In the unboxing and first impression video, I did mention that Legacy Audio did recommend these amplifiers for their speakers and said they are a great fit. Not only that, Legacy Audio used to use the Nuprime Audio amplifiers for their very own demos, which are a couple more reasons why I decided to go with the Nuprime amps. If a brand like Legacy Audio is willing to say that they are a great fit for their high-end speakers and that they used to use them for their own demos, of course they're going to want their speakers to sound as good as possible for potential customers or new customers, so they're not going to recommend something that isn't going to sound fantastic with their speakers. And they absolutely did not disappoint. As soon as I got them hooked up and powered on, I was blown away by their performance. Which brings us to the next section, the sound quality and performance of these amplifiers. The first thing that I noticed about these amplifiers was how incredibly dynamic they were with movies and music. It's something I wasn't really used to with my previous amplifiers. My tone winner amplifiers did sound great and they did have good dynamics for a budget amplifier, but at the same time, these AMG STAs took things to a whole new level. Now, of course, some of this has to be attributed to the Legacy Audio speakers, but at the same time, these little powerhouse amplifiers do play a role in dynamics. I can keep cranking up the volume until it is uncomfortable for my ears, and they never really seem to break a sweat. But do keep in mind that I am running them in bridged or mono mode, which is 320 watts into my 4 ohm speakers. But even in stereo mode, you should have more than enough power to run most speakers with medium to good efficiency. But given the history of Nuprime that their products seem to be geared at more of a music or audiophile group, don't let that fool you for a second. Yes, these amplifiers did perform extremely well with the music demos, but at the same time, the dynamics and clarity translate very well from music to movies. The responsive power that these amplifiers put out made everything that I listened to or everything that I demoed just a little bit more enjoyable. But not everything was enjoyable with these amplifiers. I don't want to come off that these amplifiers were perfect, even though they did suit my use case exceptionally well. I did run into one hiccup, and that is when powering them off and then on quite quickly, which I contacted Nuprime Audio about, and it is something that they are aware of. If you power them off and then power them on quickly, they won't power on properly, meaning that you won't get sound out of them. But it's not a permanent issue. You just power it down again, let it sit for 2 or 3 minutes and power it on, and everything is fine. The only reason I found out about this is because of my YouTube channel. I do test new gear, so I'm constantly switching things around. So obviously I don't want to be changing connections on the amplifier when it's powered on, so I'd power it off, change the connection, and then power it right back on. Hence why I found out about this issue. So for most people, that won't be a problem. They're only going to power it on, use it, and then power it off. They're not going to be switching it on and off like I was. But Nuprime did say that since these are Class D amplifiers, there is absolutely no problem in just leaving them on because they are efficient. They're not going to use up a whole lot of energy, and they're not going to overheat your rack. So moving on with the sound quality, I just want to point out that amplifiers play more of a supporting role when it comes to sound quality with your speakers. Your speakers do play a much more prominent role in how things sound. But what I can tell you about these amplifiers is that they do provide incredibly quick and responsive power, which is why I believe I'm experiencing such fantastic dynamics. And I also think that it contributes to the tight and fast bass that I'm experiencing with the Focus SE towers. The highs are super detailed and airy, but again, most of this is reliant on the speakers. All right, now we've come to the point in the video where I'm gonna do some demos, but of course this comes with a disclaimer, and the disclaimer is that my recording equipment, my speakers, my room, as well as the device that you're listening on is greatly gonna affect the sound, so it is not gonna be an accurate depiction of what I'm hearing in my room. And in addition to that, as I already pointed out, mostly what you're going to be hearing here is my speakers and not the amplifiers, but I know there's a lot of guys out there that love demos, so we're going to do them anyway. For the music demos, they are going to be in 2-channel mode without any subwoofers and without Anthem room correction enabled, and for the movie demos, I will be doing them in surround mode, but without the amplifiers, but I will have Anthem room correction enabled. So the first demo we have here is called Good Vibes, and it's by King EF. The second demo we have is a classical guitar duet called Lowly Tavern Bard by Techno Axe. And the last song demo we have here is called Done by Matthew May. Alright, so let's move on to a couple movie demos, first of which is one of my favorite movie demos for my system, and that is the bar fight scene from John Wick, only because it has a lot of dynamics in this scene. Moving along to the second movie demo, it is the race scene in Ready Player One. So that concludes the demos. It also concludes the sound quality and performance section of this video, which now brings us to my final thoughts and my conclusions. I think the best way to put it is that these amplifiers will not take anything away from the experience. They're going to be able to handle anything you throw at them, and they will impress with their sonic characteristics. Another thing I want to point out that I maybe should have covered in the sound quality and performance is that these amplifiers are dead silent. When you hook them up to your speakers, there are some amplifiers where you're going to hear a hiss or maybe even a little bit of a buzz if you put your ear to the tweeter. These are absolutely silent. I now know why Nuprime amplifiers have gained such a following with what people would consider audiophiles. It offers astonishing sound characteristics for a reasonable price, and if this is how Class AD performs, they're incredibly light, they're incredibly small, they don't heat up your rack, they're still very well built, they're still very good, hard-hitting, clean power, well then, I'm in. But you won't need high-end expensive speakers to enjoy this amplifier. I personally believe that it will impress regardless of the speaker. And I think that's a perfect way to sum up my thoughts on these amplifiers, is that I'm impressed. Like I said earlier in the video, I wanted to give Nuprime Audio a chance to win me over, and they've done exactly that with the Nuprime AMG STA amplifiers. I've definitely come around to believing that you don't need a 60 or 100-pound amplifier that acts like a small personal heater to get stellar sound. And I have absolutely zero hesitations in recommending this amplifier. As I said before, I did find that one flaw or that one hiccup, but it's not really a huge deal because only somebody like me that's flicking it on and off quickly is going to experience that anyway. So for all of you out there, this is a fantastic choice. I've dropped links down in the description if you're interested. Make sure you stay tuned on the channel. I will be doing a review of the 4-channel MCX4 Nuprime amplifier, so make sure you subscribe, tick the bell icon if you do, and hit that like button for me. I really do appreciate it. Remember to enjoy your systems. I'll see you on the next one. Cheers.